Oh, you've reached the rapid fire edition of the midweek edition of Legal AF with Karen Friedman McNiffalo and Michael Popok. We have so much to talk about. I'm not even going to do an introduction. You're here. You've been with us for 5 years. We vibrate on the same frequency. You know Karen, world-class former prosecutor, defense lawyer. You know me, Major Kibitzer, used to be a lawyer, play one on YouTube. You know, we get together at least once a week to talk about the things at the intersection of law and politics and the defense of our democracy that matter. And let's get to it. Karen, speed round. Epstein. This is like word association. Rorschach test. Epstein. Donald Trump's accidental confession about why he's pissed off at Epstein at the time and why he stopped having a relationship. I'll give you a hint. It had to do with the fact that Epstein was poaching the young girls that Donald Trump wanted to have work at his Mar-a-Lago. That's the reason. That does not help him. I will ask the former prosecutor what she thinks about this when he was out of gas in Scotland, and he gave this statement about he was stealing young girls from me at Mar-a-Lago, and why that doesn't help him in the cover-up of the scandal that is swirling around and stenching around his administration. Then we're going to put together, right after that, this Boesberg, Judge Boasberg, Alina Habba, Emil Bovey, the Boesberg, Haba segment, and what it ultimately means. And then I want to talk about a really great topic you came up with when we were doing the formation of the show, redistricting, because it's something that really matters. There's not enough attention paid to it. And we're going to end the episode on redistricting. And you have a great idea about your old office, the Manhattan DA, and Ghislaine Maxwell and the Manhattan. I want to talk about that as well. So what did you learn in the last 72 hours in this rapidly moving story that is Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump's inability to solve for the equation of how do I get the F out of this Epstein scandal? What have you learned?
I mean, first of all, the more he talks, the more he just digs his own grave. It's like he just can't help himself. And the fact that he was talking about the fact that they were best friends. They were thick as thieves, both in New York and in Florida. They had there's all sorts of pictures of them together at various social activities. In fact, they were so close that Donald Trump, as reported by the Washington Post, and now is the subject of a $50 million legal battle that he's suing Rupert Murdoch for, he also participated in his bound birthday book, where he hand drew a drawing of a naked woman and then signed his name in Sharpie where the pubic hair region would be. That's how close they were. Those are supposed to be his closest friends and family. Well, obviously that's a problem for Donald Trump and people who have seen these files, the quote unquote Epstein files that there's all these fights over, have said Donald Trump is all over the place, up and down those files and those folders all over the place. So he's squirming. He's trying to get out of it. He's trying to make excuses. He's saying, oh, well, we had a falling out years ago. Hadn't seen that guy in a long time. And apparently that is apparently true, that they weren't as close in recent years. But he says it's because that guy was a creep. In other words, he knew that he was a sexual predator. He knew because he was stealing young women employees from Mar-a-Lago's spa. First of all, what does that say about Mar-a-Lago and their spa, that they have all these young girls working there? But in any event, that's apparently what the falling out was over. What's troubling to me is what happened after that. So, okay, they have a falling out for whatever reason. I think it's pretty clear it was over a real estate deal and they were bidding on the same piece of property in Florida, that it wasn't about young girls, but be that as it may, what Donald Trump has done since then, I think, is beyond atrocious. He has engaged in this whole Epstein file, talking out of both sides of your mouth, and he is just digging a grave for himself that thankfully even the right-wing MAGA people who want these files to be released, thankfully they're not giving up on that. And so what's happening now is the Senate Democrats moved to compel the Trump administration to release Epstein material. It was led by New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who's the minority leader, the Democratic minority leader in the Senate, and plus 7 other Democrats on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. They sent a letter to the Department of Justice basically asking them to turn over the files. And this is something called the Senate Rule of Five, which is what it's colloquially called. It's a statute from 1928, believe it or not. I love that the Democrats are invoking these old laws that aren't used very often, just the way the Trump administration likes to do. And this law basically gives government agencies they have to comply if there are relevant information, if there are 5 members of a particular committee, which is the chamber's chief oversight panel, if they request it. So this is a little known rule, and there's one in the House, there's one in the Senate. I think the House actually requires 7 members, and for the Senate, it's 5. And Chuck Schumer got that, and it's caused this huge rift, within the Republican Party. In fact, it was so dramatic that, as we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, that Mike Johnson he shut down the House early to go to recess, and we'll see what ends up happening. Look, both parties have invoked this special law that can get all these files if they ask for it, but it's never gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But it's really interesting that they are invoking this. This is the statute's 5 United States Code 2954. It says the executive agency on request of, and then they insert the Committee on Homeland Security and the Governmental Affairs of the Senate, or any 5 members thereof, shall submit any information requested of it relating to any matter within the jurisdiction of the committee. We request the full and complete Epstein files as identified by the DOJ and the FBI. So it's a great letter that Chuck Schumer wrote with these requests. He basically puts in Trump and Bondi's language about what there is and that it exists and that I'm going to release it, but now I'm not. And it's really going to push this issue, at least in a really big way. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out.
Yeah, that's on the Congress side. And then we've got the people finally waking up to the relationship between Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer and Todd Blanche, which I reported on last week with the exact same clip. Politico woke up this week and found the clip that I found last week of a giggling Todd Blanche on a little watched podcast, although I watched it. That is what was run by David Oscar Marcus, the lawyer for Ghislaine Maxwell, in which they were giggling like schoolgirls and obviously have a close relationship. Neither one of them are transparent about their relationship, which is obviously a part of this cover-up and conspiracy. Now the mainstream media woke up and said, wait a minute, these two look to be buddies. Yeah, they're buddies. And there's a lot of buddies involved in this. Dershowitz and Marcus are buddies. Dershowitz got accused, although she eventually retracted it, got accused by Virginia Joffrey before she killed herself in April of being part of the whole island of Dr. Epstein and the problems there. And he's best friends with Marcus from their days at Harvard. Dershowitz represented Epstein and got him that non-prosecution agreement in 2008 in the Southern District of Florida, that if they didn't get that, it would have, they properly prosecuted him, maybe hundreds, if not thousands of women and girls would not have been sexually abused by Jeffrey Epstein. So that's on Dershowitz. Now, Dershowitz is turning around without revealing to the public that he was involved and represented Epstein to get that non-prosecution agreement that Ghislaine Maxwell is using at the United States Supreme Court in the last several days to get her out from under her conviction, even though she's not named in the non-prosecution agreement. She's not named. She wasn't a signatory. She didn't participate. She didn't sign it. It doesn't deal with it doesn't deal with the Southern District of New York. Notwithstanding all of that, Dershowitz never reveals his relationships to any of these people, which is also part of the cover-up. And now you've got the questioning that I did a week ago coming in. I just saw a video on one of my quote-unquote competitors who said, maybe the conspiracy started when they fired James Comey's daughter 3 weeks ago, who prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell. I said, yeah, maybe they did. I said that 3 weeks ago, that was the start. You get rid of the line prosecutor, who knows everything about the case first, because I'm sure the conversation, if we ever get the records, between Blanche and David Oscar Marcus, the lawyer for Ghislaine Maxwell, happened sometime like, we got to get rid of the prosecutor. I got to be able to go into this alone without any knowledge. This is Blanche's thought process. We got to get rid of her. Oh, it's good. She lost part of the Diddy case. Good. The people think it's over that. Let's get rid of her. And he goes in to meet with her. You've been a prosecutor. Goes in to meet with on an immunity that Trump signed off on, of a convicted child sex trafficker, for 2 full days, and doesn't take any of the prosecutors that prosecuted the case along with him. He doesn't know the case well enough. He doesn't want to know the case well enough to be able to catch her in a lie, which is part of the immunity deal. But of course, that gets ignored. So this Dershowitz, Marcus, Blanche connectivity gets ignored by mainstream media, although we've been talking about it at length on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF, and what it means for the overriding cover-up. And it's the Dems. You and I actually talked a couple of years ago about the Gang of Five, the Rule of Five, because that's what you got to do when you're out of power. When you're out of power and you can't get the committee chair to sign off on your subpoenas, you got to do something else. And fortunately, there's these other ways of large groups getting together and forcing the issue. And this is what you got. This is the playbook when you're out of power. When you're a party out of power trying to get back into power. It's one of the problems the Democrats are having in their kind of reputation right now. I mean, I wasn't shocked when I saw 36% of America would trust the Democrats with the government, almost, if not a little bit lower than Trump. It's because they're out of power, and it's very difficult to see what they're doing. There's only so many times you can take to social media. It's only so many times you can interview Jamie Raskin or Cory Booker. I love them. There's only so many things you can do about, what they're doing to challenge. I object. I strenuously object. Until we get back into power, making real change for the American people's lives is more difficult. And so we have to deal with that. Talk about your thought process about what your old office could do related to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah. So just for the heck of it, just batting around in my head, could the Manhattan DA's office open up an investigation and subpoena materials and really look at this case as well? And it's an interesting exercise to go through in your head. There are some logistical hurdles. One of them is double jeopardy, because there are final adjudications in both the Epstein case and the Maxwell case. She was convicted and sentenced, and he was abated. His case it's called abated by death because he's dead. So anyway, what are you going to do? You can't prosecute somebody who's not alive. So the question is, what could they do? Could they then issue subpoenas and try to get evidence and see what is out there? There are some tricky aspects to that, not just because of double jeopardy, but because of discovery laws. When you prosecute someone, like say they do get a third party, somebody else who had sex with an underage person, there's depending on the age, et cetera, and trafficking and rape laws in New York, it could happen from a statute of limitations period, even though it was a while ago. But there's discovery laws that require the DA's office to be able to turn over so many documents that I don't know that they could have access to, because the feds would refuse to turn it over. So there are some logistical problems with prosecution, but there is one thing that I think the Manhattan DA's office can and should do. And I say the Manhattan DA's office because some of the allegations were here in Manhattan, and they can open up a grand jury investigation. If you remember, in Georgia, for example, Fani Willis did a grand jury investigation first, and then there was a report and a recommendation, and then the criminal case. Then they assembled a new grand jury and brought an actual criminal case. And that can happen in New York too. And in fact, New York has always issued grand juries investigations, not a lot, but maybe 1 or 2 a year. And it's over some issue like this, frankly, something to figure out, why did Jeffrey Epstein get such a sweetheart deal in Florida? Why, despite all of the things that are going on, what did people know, like Donald Trump and others? And just what the extent of the abuse was here and whether there are any other third parties, meaning other people who also engaged in these acts with underage girls. And so if they were to do that, what they would do is they would open up an investigatory grand jury. They would issue subpoenas. They would call witnesses. And at the end, they would issue a report. Again, it's not a prosecution, but it's a report on the issue, on the matter, on the situation, on the case. So there are things that if they wanted to, they could do, but I don't think anyone should overpromise because there are some limitations based on what we just talked about. And frankly, Ms. Defendant Maxwell is saying that when Jeffrey Epstein received a non-prosecution agreement, that should apply to her too. So she's trying to stretch that, which I've never seen something like that apply to a co-conspirator. But that's what she's trying to do, that the sweetheart deal that he got in Florida, where he pled to like a misdemeanor or something crazy like that, and in exchange everything else got forgiven, that she's now making an application before the court saying that should apply to her as well. But I've never seen that before. I've never seen a co-conspirator or a co-defendant also get swept up into an umbrella of a deal like that.
Well, the agreement does have a mention that the co-conspirators, and there's 4 that are named, and then other co-conspirators that are not named, won't be prosecuted by the Southern District of Florida. So maybe that is a little bit different than other NPA non-prosecution agreements that you entered into.
Was she one of the ones named?
No. And you'd have to, in order for her argument to hold water, you'd have to believe that the lawyers for Epstein, including Alan Dershowitz, negotiated a narrow non-prosecution agreement for their client, meaning only the Southern District of Florida. But for the co-conspirators who were not their clients, they got them a national bar to prosecution anywhere in the United States. Who believes that?
Yeah.
But how is that even possible? So I get the co-conspirators couldn't have been prosecuted in Florida. I just don't get how that backs up on somebody who didn't participate, even though they're a co-conspirator, in the Southern District of New York. And the Supreme Court is, I'm sorry, they may love Donald Trump and want to bend over backwards on the executive theory and give him all the superpowers that they can. But child sex trafficking and somebody that's not the president of the United States, I just don't see this. And to be clear, because you and I talk a lot about in the courtroom experience, because we both have it, she's not arguing. I want to make this clear to people. She's not arguing that she's not guilty. She's not arguing that she didn't get a fair trial. She's not arguing any aspect of her trial went awry. She's not arguing that evidence came in that shouldn't have, that evidence should have come in that didn't, that there was jury tampering, witness tampering, prosecutorial misconduct, the indictment shouldn't have ever been brought, grand jury problems. She's not arguing any of that. She's arguing, I got convicted. However, I should never have been prosecuted because I was an unnamed co-conspirator for this agreement from 20 years ago. And the government should stand by its deals, and Donald Trump's the ultimate deal maker, therefore, by the transitive property, let me out of prison. That's her argument. I just don't see the Supreme Court finding that remotely interesting.
Yeah.
Right? But Marcus is, he's got a client. We all have clients. We all have, we know people that have clients, and we know he's doing his level best to try to get her that pardon, and he's working it. I joke in every one of my hot takes about it. When there's a bank of microphones, even if it doesn't involve his case, there's David Oscar Marcus in the last several days. If you didn't know him before, it's hard to miss him now. And he's just campaigning. And she's basically said, well, I got what I wanted. I might get a pardon. You want me to go to Congress? Oh, no, I don't think so. Unless I get a full immunity and probably a pardon, you're never going to see the backside of my ass is sitting in Congress, or I'm going to take the fifth. And she will, because her number one goal right now is not to die as an old lady, a convicted sex trafficker in jail. That's her number one goal. And she's trying to figure out through David Oscar Marcus whether Donald Trump's intent to save his own ass is greater than how immoral it would be for a president to grant a pardon to a convicted sex trafficker. That would be political suicide for anybody else. But the fact that he still hasn't ruled it out, it's just leveled, like told the American people, I may do a lot of crazy things you don't agree with, but I would never pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. He won't say that because he's trying to figure out politically and strategically how it helps Donald Trump. And that's what he will do. And somebody will tell him that from the political calculus, it doesn't matter. You're ironclad, you're Teflon. You can pardon her or this guy or that guy, no matter what their crimes, and it will never back up on you. And if he believes that, he'll pull the trigger on it. And if he doesn't, he won't. And that's where, only if it helps him, only if he believes it helps him. So, Karen, when we come back, we're going to talk about Trump more. We'll talk about how the retaliatory judicial complaint that's been filed against the Chief Judge of D.C. Circuit Court or Federal Court, Judge Boasberg, by Bondi just days after he is making a referral of DOJ lawyers for disciplinary proceedings, including maybe losing their bar licenses in the cases involving immigration and removal. We'll loop that into Alina Habba and all of the I thought Gumby was flexible. What she is doing to keep this job, I would be embarrassed. I would be like, you know what? I'm not getting this job. No, not her. There's no level beneath which she will not grovel in order to get this job. And we'll talk about a new filing that just happened, including Alina Habba. And then, it even earlier than I thought, because I thought it was scheduled for Thursday. Emil Bovee is failed up. Criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump, or as Todd Blanche calls his former law partner, he is the most principled person I've ever met, and he's Donald Trump's DOJ warrior. He's now a Third Circuit Court of Appeals lifetime appointed judge after a vote. And what does that mean for the 10 other federal judges that are up? What does that mean for recess appointments? We got a lot to talk about in that arena. And then I want to end it with something that is so important, is redistricting coming off the 2020 census. And how the Republicans are trying in red states to rewrite the maps in a way that completely disenfranchise Democrats. California's trying to do something similar, but the Republicans are really trying to do it in places like Texas, and we'll talk about that. But we've got great news for everybody. 5 years into this experiment, we have sponsors who know what we're going to say. There's thousands of episodes of Legal AF. And yet, and knowing what we're going to say and knowing our audience, they're here for it. We just got some great news. We're in the top 20 for YouTube rankings of podcasts of any genre. It could be, that 8-year-old that unboxes toys, Rachel, who my daughter loves, he gets 700 million views of her singing.
That's Miss Rachel.
I'm sorry, whatever it is. I just want to know if she has an entire closet of blue overalls and pink shirts. I'm sure she does. Sure, she does.
Miss Rachel is actually incredible. So
she's incredible. She gets 700. You and I talk about our rankings and reviews. She gets 700 million views on The Wheels of the Bus Go Round and Round. I love that.
Yeah, she's incredible.
But in all that ranking, she doesn't have a podcast yet. Of all that ranking, top 20, not bad for Legal AF. So there's ways to support the show. One is the sponsors. If you've got disposable income, you find these products interesting. We've already vetted them and tested them. I don't know exactly what's coming up next, but whatever they are, we've tried them out. We like them. Jordy helps us curate them. That's one way. Then there's the podcast. Podcast always needs love. It's like a plant. It always needs attention and love and light. If that's that kind of plant, it needs water and fertilizer. Got to move it around the room so you find the right spot. That's our podcast. Audio downloads really help because that's on the audio side. So go over to wherever you get audio podcasts from, download, listen, reminder, all that good stuff for the Legal AF podcast. And leave a review. We still love our reviews. We read our reviews, and they're important, 5 stars and all that good stuff. Then you got the YouTube version. And we have clips of the YouTube version, and we need to continue to grow our YouTube audience. And you can help us with that as well. We've got a Legal AF YouTube channel where we put up 10 to 12 new videos every day. I curate along with other contributors. It's Legal AF MTN. The MTN signals that we're in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network and the brothers. Come over there. We just crossed 730,000 subscribers, 220 million views, and we're not even a toddler yet. We're not even a year old. But with your help, we need some love over there as well. We got a Legal AF Substack. That's a companion piece for that, where we post all of the filings and all of the complaints and my own analysis and other people's analysis and contributors, all all over the place in law and politics, all on the Legal AF Substack. We launched a new Instagram, Legal AF Instagram, where we have shorts and videos and other interesting things. So these are all the ways where people say, how do you support this? And of course, the Midas Touch Network, hit the subscribe button for them because they're the mothership and they're the oxygen that we all breathe. So that's how we do things. But now we've got a word from our sponsors. Right now, the headlines are chock full of data breaches and regulatory rollbacks, making us all vulnerable. But you can do something about it. Delete Me is here to make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online. As someone who spends a lot of time online for Legal AF, I know how important it is to protect your personal information. I've gotten those emails. Your data has been compromised, and it's frustrating, even scary. That's why I use Delete Me. Delete Me does all the hard work of removing your personal data from hundreds of data broker websites. You tell them what you want gone, and their privacy experts take care of the rest. And they don't stop there. Delete Me sends you regular, personalized privacy reports so you know what they found, where they found it, and what they removed. They're constantly working to keep your data off the internet. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/legalaf and use promo code legalaf at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/legalaf and enter code legalaf at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/legalaf, code legalaf. So I went to my 40th high school reunion recently, and while many of my classmates were excited about retiring or have retired, well, I brought my infant daughter to the reunion and I won the youngest child contest hands down. But that means that when most people's working is winding down to match their body's energy levels, I need to ramp up to keep up with my baby daughter. I believe one of the best aging breakthroughs of the last decade is Qualia Senolytic, and here's why. Qualia Senolytic is at the frontier of what is currently possible in the science of human aging. Senolytics are a science field revolutionizing human aging. A big culprit behind that middle-aged feeling can be senescent cells, aka zombie cells that linger in your body after their useful function, wasting your energy and resources. Let me break it down. The accumulation of zombie cells can lead to less energy, slower workout recovery, joint discomfort, and basically, well, feeling old. Qualia Senolytic is a groundbreaking, clinically tested supplement with 9 vegan plant-derived compounds that help your body naturally eliminate senescent cells, helping you feel years younger in just months. Here's how it works. You take it just 2 days a month, helping your body naturally eliminate zombie cells to age better at the cellular level. And Qualia's breakthrough formulation is vegan, non-GMO, and tested by leading scientists. Since taking Qualia Senolytic, I felt like I've turned back the clock. I got higher energy, less soreness after exercise, and a big boost in productivity. It's made me feel more youthful and energized as I have the energy level to nurture my baby daughter the right way. Experience the science of feeling younger. Go to qualialife.com/legalaf for up to 50% off your purchase and use code legalaf for an additional 15%. That's qualialife.com/legalaf for an extra 15% off your purchase. Your older self will thank you. And thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode. Welcome back. Support the show, the sponsors, the Substack, the Legal AF YouTube channel, and of course, the podcast. Now we're back with our original content. I want to talk about Karen. I want to talk about Boesberg. I want to talk about Haba. I want to talk about Bove. We're going to do a pick 'em. You pick the one that you want to talk about first and you lead. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'm really outraged by what's happening to Judge Boasberg. I have to say.
Let's go with Boesberg. You're on.
Yeah, that's the one that just really irritates me. That Judge Boasberg is the chief judge in DC. He's a great judge by all accounts. He's being jerked around by the Trump administration in his various these undocumented immigrant cases. And frankly, the Trump administration has already violated his orders, and he's initiating contempt proceedings as a result. And he went to what's called the judicial conference where this is the Judicial Conference of the United States. It's a national conference of judges, and not all judges get to go. I think it's one per circuit, not even one per district. And then it's like the chief judge in a circuit, and then the chief judge of the appellate level, and then the Supremes. So it's a small conference, and this is a conference that serves as the policy-making body for the federal courts. So it convenes twice a year, and they consider administrative and policy issues affecting the federal court system, and they make recommendations to Congress concerning legislation involving the judicial branch. This is something that has gone on for long periods of time, and it's not public. It is a private meeting of judges where they can discuss policy issues. They don't discuss individual cases, et cetera. And it's a real opportunity to kind of get together and come up with, talk about concerns and things that are going on. And Pam Bondi filed an official complaint against Judge Boasberg, which, think about this. This is the Attorney General of the United States filing an official complaint against a federal district judge, which is kind of outrageous, and basically said it because it's against him. They filed it with the DC Circuit. It went to a judge there. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Srinivazan, and this basically said that Judge Boasberg made, quote, improper public comments about President Donald J. Trump to the Chief Justice, meaning John Roberts of the United States Supreme Court, and other federal judges that have undermined the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary. Now, what's this about? On March 11th, she says, 2025, Boasberg attended a session of the Judicial Conference of the United States that she characterized as which exists to discuss administrative matters like budgets, security, and facilities. Well, if you look at online what the Judicial Conference of the United States actually is, it says it's a conference that makes policy for federal courts. It's not just about budgets and facilities and security. This is about policy. And so that's just complete false, the way she tries to characterize it of what this is. And the complaint goes on to say that he attempted to improperly influence Chief Justice Roberts and two dozen other federal judges, because he expressed, what he said was that there are judges, his colleagues, who are of the belief that the Trump administration will disregard rulings of the federal court and trigger a constitutional crisis. Now, again, this is perfectly appropriate. He didn't talk about a particular case. He didn't talk about a preconceived notion about anything. He said, this is what the judges in my district are saying, that they have a concern about this. And he wanted to bring it up to the court, to the Chief Justice, in this private setting that's supposed to be private and confidential, and a free place to discuss issues. So she just went off and is accusing him of trying to influence the Chief Justice, saying that he's violated his canon of ethics, that a judge has to uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, that he has to act in ways that promotes public confidence, that he shouldn't make public comment on the merits of any matter. He didn't do any of those things. This was absolutely a private conversation. These were not public. This is leaked information from someone who was there. And these were comments relaying concerns of his colleagues. It wasn't anything about preconceived notions of his own. So, it's really an attempt to intimidate Judge Boasberg and other judges so that they don't do things like enforce orders. And, frankly, another thing Pam Bondi said is, the Trump administration always follows court orders. Well, that we know that's not true. We've covered numerous times where they actually haven't done that. And in fact, there was I think 40-something page rule decision that Judge Boasberg had done, basically essentially spelling out how they violated his order by sending 150 members of a gang that they're alleging are Tren de Aragua, who are Venezuelan, to El Salvador. And that's what this whole thing is about, is that, in fact, that they aren't listening to his order. And so these are concerns that I think are perfectly appropriate to discuss there. And this is absolutely not a problem whatsoever. It would be like saying, you know, if a judge is in chambers talking to his clerks about an issue and they're sort of going back and forth on the issue, that somehow if somebody leaks that or overhears that was made public. That's ridiculous. So it is not a public statement, and certainly he didn't express that he had any preconceived notions. If the reporting is accurate, you know, obviously we weren't there, but it was about his colleagues and concerns and what should they do about this, because no attorney general or president in the history of this country that we know of has overtly defied court orders. In fact, Emile Beauvais, who you teased already, that was the criminal defense attorney who represented Donald Trump in the Manhattan DA case. They got a conviction, of course, was just elevated to the Third Circuit as a lifetime appointment for a judge, despite the fact that the numerous whistleblowers, I think 4 whistleblowers, have come forward to talk about how unqualified he is for the job, and the fact that he himself said that they are going to basically ignore court orders and use the F word in describing what they're going to do with these court orders. So there was a reason for, I mean, he was the number 2 in the Department of Justice up until yesterday when he was given this lifetime appointment. So there is reason to believe that they might, in fact, defy court orders because A, they have said they would, and B, they have done it. And so it was perfectly appropriate thing for him to raise in the forum that he raised it. This is an absolute ridiculous, frivolous accusation that's going to go nowhere. It's ultimately going to be dismissed. Mm-hmm. And frankly, if Chief Justice Roberts had a problem with what Judge Boesberg said to him at this conference, he would have said something then and there. But there's no reporting that he did say anything. This is really just an attempt to delegitimize the justice system, the judicial branch, and frankly, chill judges and chill others from making difficult rulings for fear of retaliation. This is just more bullying on their part.
And the complaint itself is retaliatory because It comes on the heels on last Friday. It was 72 hours after Judge Boasberg had before him Department of Justice lawyers in the JGG case, which deals with the 200 people that were sent in the middle of the night over his court orders, which are also the subject of his probable cause to find criminal contempt that's been held up by 2 Trump judges at the D.C. Court of Appeals, the circuit court, the appellate court for the D.C. Federal Court, by Judge Rayo and Judge Katsas, who have been just sitting on it since April, just sitting on it. They stayed as contempt proceedings and just sitting on it. And pardon me.
You know what's interesting about this, while you cough and clear your throat, is as I think about this, what if the judge holds a hearing? What's he going to do? Call Chief Justice Roberts to the stand? I mean, he's the witness. Yeah. Like, it's crazy to me, this whole thing. Anyway, Go on.
No. So the retaliation is, so people know the timeline. Thursday, Boasberg calls into his courtroom all the lawyers for the Department of Justice, including the ones who had been outed at the one of 3 so far whistleblowers against Emile Beauvais, including Erez Ruveni, who worked under, ultimately under Beauvais as the number 3 in the Department of Justice, but really under Drew Ensign in the Immigration Litigation Division, and said in a March meeting that that's where Emile Beauvais told people, you are to tell federal judges to go F off and go F you if they ask you anything about the Alien Enemies Act and Trump's orders to deport and remove people. You are not to give them information. You are not to tell them the truth. You're to lie to federal judges. And what Boasberg said out loud on Thursday, this is 3 days before, in retaliation, this complaint was filed against him, is he said, I may not be able to move the probable cause for criminal contempt proceeding forward, and people are frustrated because I'm waiting on the appellate court. But the lawyers in front of me, he always talks about the lawyers in front of them. It's not the first time he's lectured the lawyers like Drew Ensign and others in the DOJ and said, you only got your professional reputation. You've only got your license. You better be telling the truth. You better not be misleading the court. You better not be suborning perjury or being contumacious. He's warned them before. And now he said, this whistleblower that's come out, and that was just about Erez Ruveni. There's been 2 more since then. He said that only strengthens my fact-finding about the criminal contempt proceedings. But now I'm looking at you guys, and I'm strongly considering making a recommendation, a referral to state disciplinary bar associations for disciplinary proceedings against your bar licenses, meaning getting disbarred. And then 3 days later, Pam Bondi citing something that happened in March. This is almost August, right? It happened, whatever it happened in March. Now they're going to try to claim, well, we didn't really learn about it until we were watching Fox News, and John Hugh, a law professor at USC or UCLA, I think UCLA, said he just found out about it from some reporting from the Federalist Society, and they actually cited John Hugh. They, to manufacture this issue and to try to make it unstale. They said, oh, July 17th, he was on television. We saw it. Okay, the event happened in March. And as you laid out perfectly, Karen, he's allowed in this conclave of judges to, at that point, 4 months into the administration, to point out the obvious, is that he questioned it, do we have an administration that is disobeying and being disobedient to federal courts? And if so, what do we do about it? Where else are they supposed to talk about it? And then right after that, he started issuing all of these orders. No, he expressed a genuine concern as the chief judge of DC. Now look, he's been on Donald Trump's shit list and on his radar since he was the second half of the grand jury presiding judge for all things Trump criminal investigation, including the case in front of Judge Chutkan and part of the case in front of Judge Cannon in Mar-a-Lago. And he's the one that eventually ruled that Mike Pence had to testify. And so he's been on the crap list for Donald Trump in this list of, when he went into office with his long list of retaliatory things he's going to do, give me that list. Boasberg's been on there from day one. And so this is all just retaliation. Hopefully Judge Srinivasan, who's the head of the appellate court that sits over Judge Boasberg, will see through this. And what they're looking for is not just a referral, like to have his hands slapped for violating judicial canons. They want to remove from the JGG case. Of course, they want the judge that has him in the crosshairs for a criminal contempt proceeding for lying to him removed from the case, turning the world upside down. My gut is that Srinivasan is going to see through this. He's not going to make a referral. He's going to find nothing wrong with it. It's very similar to the tactics that Donald Trump used against Judge Merchan in the criminal conviction case of his up in New York, where he filed bar complaints, judicial ethics complaints against him, and the guy had to defend himself and get cleared related to that. We will see, and you and I will follow it very closely. Let's switch gears and go to Haba. Kind of touched on Bove already. Haba. So Haba gets withdrawn from her nomination. She gets reappointed. They fire the person that the 17 judges picked to be the acting interim, Desiree Lee Grace. She goes by Lee Grace. Poor 15-year prosecutor. She stepped into it. She was the acting interim for like less than a day. And then Donald Trump said, oh, no, I fire you. And then I'm going to make Alina Habba her own assistant. And then I'm going to elevate the assistant. Then I'm going to make her the special attorney under the Constitution with the powers to be the U.S. Like, why do you want this job? If this is what needs to happen, is that what your resume is going to say, your obituary? She was once the acting interim under an illicit appointment. I mean, this is what you want the job? So now criminal defense lawyers like you and me filed a motion, a lawyer in particular, in a drug case that was going to trial like next week, to have her disqualified and to have like the indictment dismissed because she's not a properly appointed, confirmed U.S. attorney. And because she's sued, because 17 judges opposed her being extended in her role under a statute, they were all recused and disqualified. So it got referred by the Third Circuit Court of Appeals chief judge to another judge in the circuit, the Middle District of Pennsylvania, sort of sitting by designation as a New Jersey judge. And he put a hold on the trial. Imagine the defense team. They're like, yes, the trial's put on hold while he considers whether everything that Alina Habba touches gets voided because she's improperly appointed. And then she had to file a brief with all her crap. Why don't you take it from that perspective? And one last little Easter egg. The lawyer who represents the criminal client, the drug dealing client, drug person client, he rents space in the Trump building at 40 Wall Street. You know 40 Wall Street downtown pretty well. And that's where he rents space. I made a joke that he needs to start looking for new space. All right, go ahead.
I'll say as a criminal defense attorney, I will say the alleged drug dealer. So
I'm sorry, you're right. It's all alleged. I love what he's doing.
I know.
Go ahead.
What's astounding and what I've never seen happen before is all federal court proceedings throughout New Jersey are canceled. They are literally getting administratively adjourned without a date because of this uncertainty about whether Alina Habba has the authority to serve as the acting U.S. attorney, different than an interim U.S. attorney, which her term as interim expired. And so it's really convoluted and really difficult to understand what this is. But essentially, there are different ways to become a U.S. attorney. There's being appointed by the president officially and then being Senate confirmed, which is the normal way it happens. Oftentimes, though, presidents will appoint the person that they are nominating as the interim so that they can hit the ground running while they go through the confirmation process. And that gives 120 days while you're the interim. Well, her term expired, and Trump then had nominated her officially to be the U.S. attorney. And so she was no longer the interim. And so what happens next? The 17 judges in the federal district court went to go vote and decide, because they have the authority to do this, who's going to be U.S. attorney. They could have voted for Alina Habba, but all 17 voted against her. Or didn't vote for her, voted for this career prosecutor who actually has experience, who Alina Habba had enough respect for, and the Republicans had enough respect for, because obviously we know Alina Habba is not the ultimate decision maker. She's more of a MAGA puppet, if you will. They approved of Desiree Lee Grace. And she was by all accounts, a respected federal prosecutor, whether she's Democrat or Republican. It shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you're supposed to prosecute without fear or favor, which is what all prosecutors are supposed to do. You're supposed to be blind to politics, to parties, to all of that. It's just about whether the person committed the crime or not. And so she had the respect of everybody. So all 17 judges voted for her, and they made her the interim United States attorney, or the acting United States attorney. Well, what does the Trump administration do? They fire her and then they make Alina Habba, what she was, the acting, which is different than interim. This gives her 210 days to be acting. And so, but the argument is not over yet, because there is a statute that says you can't be acting if you were also nominated by the president. And they're saying, oh, but he withdrew the nomination so that she can be acting for 210 days, which they did to try to play games here. But according to various legal experts who know about this sort of thing, what they're saying is it doesn't matter. It's not that whether you withdraw it or not, she was still nominated. And so you can't use this to get around the Senate confirmation process. And so the judges are saying, look, this is not non-frivolous. And so as a result, because we have to pursue this, because I don't know, we have to litigate this. We have to put everything on pause while we figure this out, because otherwise everything that is done by that office, by Alina Habba, who signs every single indictment and has to sign everything that goes out, she's the one who has the authority to prosecute. Obviously, to prosecute someone, to take away their liberty, it's the ultimate power that somebody has. Not just anyone off the street can do that, obviously. So if her appointment is not legitimate, then anything she does will have a waterfall effect and not be legitimate. So they have it on pause while they litigate this issue. It's a very, very serious thing that's happening, and criminal prosecutions at the federal level in the state of New Jersey are on hold because of it.
That's the big. I have not heard that reported that way, and that's one of the great of many attributes you bring to Legal AF and to briefing our our audience is that kind of nuance, because I've seen a lot of people like, oh, Alina Habba. They focus on the Alina Habba drama part, and they don't focus on the impact on the criminal justice system in New Jersey, the 5th largest U.S. attorney's office in America, and its deleterious impact of playing games with trying to get your office wife to be something that she can't be. I'll leave it on this. In her filing that she just did to oppose this motion that I just talked about, she actually acknowledges on page 2 that there's something better than her, a Senate confirmed U.S. attorney, because she said, well, regardless about me, this case should go forward with this alleged drug dealer because they were indicted by a grand jury and a properly Senate confirmed U.S. attorney. I was like, well, that's self-confessional. I agree with that. There is something better than you and stronger than you. And I would, but then, because she's so stupid, she doesn't even know. The other thing I loved about her filing, there was actually an exhibit where in the same letter, not even 2 different letters, she said, I resign from the office of acting interim U.S. attorney. Next line. I look forward to serving as the U.S. attorney for New Jersey. I was like, couldn't you at least do that in 2 letters? I mean, it's so hokey and so half smart. It's just ridiculous. Well, we got to put our brain power on, because when we come back from our next break, we got to dive into redistricting. And I don't want the audience's eyes to glaze over when we talk about voter disenfranchisement, the Voting Rights Act. I mean, I just learned, for instance, in Miami, that the rolls have been purged of over 250,000 Democrats and only 40,000 Republicans, based on things like signature and registration issues by the Republican head of the county clerk who's responsible for all these things, who's a Republican operative. And that's what's happening. You may think you're registered, but you're not registered. And if you live in a red state or a purpley state, depending upon who the person is responsible, the Secretary of State or others, go and make sure you are registered to vote, because you don't want to find out and scramble on the day of the election that you get there. Sorry, you were taken off the rolls. That's what they are doing behind the scenes. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about redistricting, which is making the districts for congressional representation. How many seats are we going to have in the House come the midterms, as Donald Trump tries to steal the midterm election before our very eyes? We can't let him do that. We're going to talk about all of that. Now we're going to talk about the ways to support the show. You know it. Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Hit the free subscribe button there. We're doing some amazing work there. 10, 12 new videos every day. This podcast, top 20 on YouTube podcasts. You can help us by bringing more people to this audience. Come over to the audio version. We could use a little love there. We're in the 50 to 90 range in terms of ratings. It matters because we don't have a corporate parent. We don't have outside investors. We don't have a paywall. So this is it. As I joked recently in a hot take, if only like 10% of the people that watch my hot takes would just hit the subscribe button, we would, I would stop having to ask. It's like PBS. You'll get a tote bag and you'll get a coffee mug if you'll support us. And they, believe me, they need support now more than ever, like us. But come over to the podcast, the audio, leave a comment, hit your reminders, 5-star review, and all that good stuff. And then we've got our pro-democracy sponsors that love our audience, love what we do, and we come together here on Legal AF. And here's our last break. In business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick 2. What if you could have all 3 at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How is it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper. OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, and 80% less for networking. Better, in test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head to oracle.com/legalaf. That's oracle.com/legalaf.
If you're anything like me, the very first thing you do when you get home is rip off your bra and get comfortable. But That is until I got this amazing new bra from Honeylove. Their bras are so comfortable, you actually forget you're wearing them. And frankly, that's not going to be the first thing you feel like doing when you get home from work. So I don't know about you, but I am absolutely in love with Honeylove. It's just a fantastic undergarment product that is our sponsor. They have wireless bras that feel like second skin. They're lightweight, they're breathable, they're perfect for the summer heat, which is where I am in New York. It's quite hot. And so whether you're wearing a t-shirt, a tank top, a sundress, their bras give you just the right amount of lift without that terrible squeeze, thanks to years of research. So they have a ton of wonderful, beautiful bras that you should look at. And they aren't the stiff wires or the bulky padding. It's the shape you want without the stuff you don't. Once you try it, you'll love it. You'll forget you're even wearing one. So go ahead, ditch the discomfort, say goodbye to those terrible underwires, and treat yourself to the summer support you deserve with Honeylove. And for a limited time, you can get Honeylove on sale. Treat yourself to 20% off your entire order by heading to honeylove.com/legalaf. Support the show and check them out because you deserve this glow up.
Welcome back to the midweek edition of Legal AF with your co-anchors, Michael Popok and Karen Friedman-McNiffalo. Redistricting, gerrymandering, things that come off the census, the acts of the Republicans in red states to make them redder, in places where there are Democrats and blue dots in red seas trying to go after their seats, are all coming to a head. We're watching it play out in Texas, where they have rolled out a new map that eliminate 5 Democratic seats, just eliminate them, or make them so Republican oriented that they will be eliminated, increasing power in a state that Donald Trump only won, I say only, by 54%, because that wasn't bad. We were getting closer in Texas. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't want us to get closer in Texas. He doesn't want it to be purple. He wants to be baked in red for a long, long time, especially at the midterms. So the fight is not for this hypothetical, 18 months from now. Fight's now over things like losing seats in Texas. Sure, we may gain a couple of seats in California. New York, unfortunately, New York screwed it up and brought in some sort of, this is why Democrats sometimes are bringing a knife to a gunfight. Sorry for that analogy these days, but they're not playing with sharp enough elbows. And we're getting steamrolled by the Republicans who have their act together and are able to bring to bear in their states. They have no problems and no qualms about steamrolling Democrats. Democrats are always like, well, why don't we get an independent map maker? Why? Why do we need to do an independent map maker? We need to gain as many seats in blue states as we're going to lose in red states. That's how this works. And I know people get squeamish about that. Like, well, aren't we the better party? Yes. Aren't we above that? Yes. But that doesn't mean we're going to let them, steal our lunch money every day on the bus stop. I mean, it has to end. Or we're going to end as a party and the two-party system is going to end. So there's a guy, Karen, particularly in Texas, that I learned a lot about in preparing for today, who's responsible for all of these maps. This guy, who I'm going to find his name in a minute, this guy, Adam Kincaid, who I never heard of, is the executive director of the National Republican Redistricting Trust. I don't know, they put the word trust at the end of it, make it sound better. He's the map maker. They're spending a lot of time and money making maps, and they've got a Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Division with Harmeet Dillon, who is doing Donald Trump's bidding by not opposing and not finding a violation of the Voting Rights Act by anything the Republicans or Andrew Kincaid want to do, or Adam Kincaid want to do. So anything he draws, she's like, well, looks good to me. Looks like it won't violate the Voting Rights Act. So if the DOJ isn't going to do what they did under Merrick Garland and others, they're not going to defend the Voting Rights Act, then that means public interest groups are going to have to go run into court and argue against redistricting with an opponent being the Department of Justice. This is the ramifications of elections and why elections matter. So And then JD Vance, why don't you pick up with JD Vance maybe blowing the case that will eventually be filed, and your own comments about this redistricting issue in Texas.
Yeah, he put up a tweet that he then had to take down and redo because he kind of showed his hand. One says, the gerrymander in California is outrageous. Of their 52 congressional districts, 9 of them are Republican. That means 17% of their delegation is Republican when Republicans regularly win 40% of the state. Republicans in Texas are right to fight back. Well, obviously that was kind of an admission, essentially. So then he changed it to, the gerrymander in California is outrageous. Of their 52 congressional districts, 9 of them, hold on.
No, he had, how can this possibly
yes, exactly. How can this possibly be allowed? Exactly. Sorry. They took out the Texas should fight back and add, how can this possibly be allowed? Which is, clearly an admission that the whole thing is screwed up. I've always thought gerrymandering is wrong, frankly. And if there's anything resembling close to stealing an election that Donald Trump keeps saying, it's stuff like this, right? It's ridiculous how they go through and they literally look at, okay, where are the black and brown people? Where are the white people? Where are the Democrats? Where are the Republicans? And they stretch these boundaries to essentially isolate and contain people so that they don't have a voice. And it really just disenfranchises minority groups and doesn't represent the United States. But when you're deliberately, so the way it's supposed to happen is every 10 years, there's a census. And that's when states typically go through and say, let's look at who has come into our state. Where are they? And how do we give them representation? And you're supposed to fairly draw these maps, these lines, so that people are represented in federal elections. And that's, there's the Voting Rights Act. There's all kinds of case law that interprets this, including Supreme Court precedent. And but gerrymandering, I think, is very problematic because it's political and it disenfranchises so many people. And here it's just blatant. And the fact that they're doing it not every 10 years, this is halfway through. This is 5 years. And they're doing it so that when the midterms come around, they can make sure that the Democrats don't regain any House seats. And why can they do that? Because the Constitution says that the time, place, and manner of elections is up to the states. So states get to do stuff like this. And Texas, because Texas is historically a red state, they love this. And so their laws allow for this. And other states like New York and California, because they care about things like fairness, because it is inherently unfair. If you were to talk to a kindergartner and say, is it fair to literally go and take a crayon and draw a map where you put certain people together just to get an advantage? Is that fair? That wouldn't pass muster for a kindergartner. Imagine trying to do that in elementary school. It is so preposterous, but somehow we have come to accept this ridiculous way of living and of voting. And so we have this. And the Democrats, though, in blue states are like, you know what, this is fundamentally unfair. And so because we believe in things like fairness, even if it means we lose sometimes, we're going to pass laws in our states that say, no, you're going to have things like independent commissions, or we're going to take certain things into consideration. And so, as you said, the Democrats are constantly bringing, I don't even know if they're bringing a knife to a gunfight. They're bringing just their fists to a gunfight. And we keep losing at 20 ways to Sunday. But this is the way, this is one of our biggest vulnerabilities, is the fact that most of the state legislatures in this country are red, they're Republican led. And because the Constitution gives the time, place, and manner of federal elections to the states, this is how one of the many ways they are going to potentially create issues. It's not fair. It's not right. And we have to fight back, as you said.
Yeah. And this is the way, this is that portion of the show as we end the show about.
That's opinion.
No. Action time. Yeah. It's fists up, elbows up. People always ask me, what can we do about it? Okay. There's lots of things you can do about it. I mean, I just got invited and I'm going on Thursday to a town hall in a very red district in Miami, being held at the Coral Gables Congregational Church, 7 p.m. on Thursday. it's hosted by the Democrats, but I mean, all the Republican elected officials, including Congress people, have been invited. I'm not sure who's going to attend. They may be tried in absentia, but I'll be there. And we're going to talk about voting registration, the purging of the voting rolls in Miami of 250,000 Democrats versus 40,000 Republicans, what we can do about that now. We know one of the benefits, I think, of this show is to give you knowledge and power now so that you can do something about it. There's an old Chinese adverb or a proverb, sorry, I've been working all day, about when is the best time to plant a tree? It's 30 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today. And not worry about what you didn't do. Just lean forward, not back. And so we can't go back and fix the 2020 census. We can't go back and fix the election that just happened. We can't fix Harmeet Dillon being head of the Civil Rights Division. We can't fix the Supreme Court, MAGA right wing, totally emasculating or undermining the Voting Rights Act. We can't fix that. We have to work within the rules and the cards that we've been dealt. And so what we do is on the ground and on the street, we make sure that our people are voting. We make sure that we vote in important elections that aren't just presidential or general, that we make sure that we regain state houses, because that's where it starts, right? They were smart, the Republicans, and they worked on the state houses and getting the boards of education and getting the local government positions and the Secretary of State positions. And we were asleep at the switch a little bit. We got to wake up. We got to wake up. And if Trump hasn't woken us up, then I don't know what will. He's like, I won't say it, but offline, I will tell you what I was thinking. So get involved. Find your local, whatever your party affiliation is. If you're independent, that's great too. There's ways for you to help with voter registration right now. There's ways for you to vote on call banking, calling into senators and the rest to help with some of the things that are going on at the Senate level and to reinforce and support the Democrats who are working hard for you in leadership, but need us. There's no greater position in America. It's not president. It's not congressperson or senator. It's citizen. Our framers and founders knew that, and we know that. And so we're in this together. I don't want people to ever walk off the show and going, oh, this is just one terrible story after another. It's empowerment. It's about speaking truth to each other first and then taking that and putting it into action. So we're at the end of our show. Karen, last word for you on Legal AF before we sign off for our shout out to our Midas Mighty and our Legal AFers.
Another one bites the dust, Popok. Brown University is settling with the Trump administration to unlock funds, and there's words that Harvard is making noises that they might settle too. So my last words are: Harvard, stay strong, don't capitulate, and do whatever you have to do, but don't capitulate to the Trump administration. Those are my positive words. Bad things happen when you bend over for Donald Trump, and I appreciate you calling out the Harvards and now he's going after one of my alma maters, going after Duke and Duke Law. The new one is like, the Duke Law Journal will let people on for DEI. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Don't you have a day job? Aren't you supposed to be protecting our national security, our economic security, instead of running it all to ground? I am told that hospitals are being told that you are not allowed to put your pronouns in your Zoom name. You have to remove all of that. You have to remove all DEI, everything from anything that you have, including things like that. If you don't, they are incentivizing people in the institution to be whistleblowers, and they are financially incentivizing them, and it is outrageous. You set up a bounty of your own employee? Basically, that is what I am being told is happening across this country. It is unbelievable to me. And it's because of this so much federal funding for research, for science, and everybody's so worried about it. We saw it. We saw the Red Scare and what it did in America. You turn in your neighbor because you thought they were a communist, incentivizing bad behavior and unpatriotic behavior. I mean, if people are bored over the summer, go read Roth's Plot Against America, a novel, but it will send a chill down your spine compared to what we're watching now. Philip Roth's book.
but we should set up a Legal AF, like an Oprah recommendations for books club. We'll do that one day we should do that over the summer. But we've reached the end of Legal AF midweek. Tune in Saturday when Ben Meiselas and I are back for the Saturday edition. And then we've got hot takes about every hour at the intersection of law and politics over on the Legal AF YouTube channel. My work, of course, on the Midas Touch Network. And follow all of us. I think we bring our competitive advantage is you, our audience. So shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.